A cold wind blew across the surface of the moon Verak, stirring the silver sands beneath the polished boots of Princess Xyra. She stood still, cloaked in shimmering armor, her violet eyes locked on the holographic projection flickering before her. The image showed the human, a target the Council deemed dangerous enough to warrant death. Captain Elias Thorn knelt, bound by energy shackles on a distant starship's deck, defiant even as his captors surrounded him. A faint bruise darkened his cheek, but his expression was calm, no trace of fear, only a quiet intensity. "You have your orders," a voice hissed from the communicator embedded in Xyra's ear. The voice of Lord Calthor, her uncle and one of the Empire's most ruthless commanders, filled her mind like static. End him before he becomes a symbol. One human cannot jeopardize centuries of order. Xyra's fingers hovered over the command rune. She could end Elias Thorn's life with a pulse of energy, a painless death, swift and clean. Her people had waged wars across the stars, consuming worlds. Killing him was supposed to be just another necessary step. But something strange tugged at her, a feeling that refused to align with her duty. As she watched the hologram flicker, her gaze lingered on the human's face. He didn't look like a conqueror. He looked tired, worn, like someone who had seen the same endless struggle she had, only from the other side of the battlefield. Her hand trembled, and that small hesitation sent a ripple of confusion through her. For the first time in her life, she questioned the Empire's perfect logic. If they killed every threat, what remained? Only silence. And she was tired of silence. Lord Calthor's voice sharpened. "Xyra, execute the order." She closed her eyes, inhaling slowly. Her people demanded obedience. The galaxy was built on it. But as she thought of the human kneeling thousands of miles away, so calm in the face of death, she wondered if there was another way. Her hand dropped. She silenced the communicator. The air around her felt heavier as she whispered into the void, "No." Xyra had just defied the Empire for the first time in her life, and she knew there was no going back. The Grand Council convened on the Imperial Station, orbiting the capital world of Telva. Towering spires of crystalline architecture gleamed beneath the artificial starlight, casting reflections that danced on the marble floors. The members of the Empire's highest governing body sat on their elevated thrones, watching a projection of Earth spinning lazily in space. Lord Calthor stood at the center, his dark robes trailing behind him like a shadow. His expression was carved in stone, cold, calculating. His mandibles twitched with irritation as the image shifted, revealing Captain Elias Thorn aboard his captured vessel, still alive. "This is unacceptable," Calthor snarled, slamming his fist onto the projection table. "He was meant to be eliminated, yet here he is, defiant. We gave Princess Xyra one simple task." His voice carried the weight of centuries of conquest, a tone that brooked no failure. A low hum of agreement echoed through the chamber. The council members, elders from every powerful colony, sat unmoved. Some leaned back, their eyes gleaming with amusement at the unfolding mess. Others shared thin-lipped frowns, disturbed by Xyra's hesitation. None of them questioned the sanctity of the Empire's mission. Control through precision, domination through unity. Deviations were not tolerated. "Humans," one counselor muttered, his antennae flicking dismissively. "They are barely pre-FTL. Why does their resistance matter? They are nothing but insects, primitive, chaotic." "Because," Calthor growled, narrowing his eyes, "they are insects that refuse to be crushed. They resist with no sense of order, no loyalty to the natural hierarchy. They challenge us, not with strength, but with unpredictability. And now they've infected one of our own." Another elder, her scales glimmering under the dim light, let out a dry hiss. "You mean Xyra?" Calthor's gaze darkened. "Yes." The princess falters. She fails to see the necessity of obedience, and that makes her a liability. The council murmured in low tones. To them, Xyra's act of mercy was not just a tactical misstep. It was heresy. The Empire thrived on absolute adherence to commands, each decision a calculated piece of a greater plan. The idea that an heir to the throne could waver in executing an order threatened the very foundation of their governance. "They cannot be allowed to spread their defiance," Calthor continued. "If this Thorn lives, he will become a symbol, a spark that could ignite rebellion in the outer systems. The council fell silent at those words. They had seen it before. A lone act of rebellion cascading into chaos, colonies rising against imperial rule, weakening the Empire's grasp on power. They could not risk such instability. "What do you propose, Lord Calthor?" one of the elders asked. Calthor leaned forward, his voice low and venomous. "If Xyra will not complete her task, then we will. The human must die, and she must be made to understand the consequences of defiance." The councillors nodded in grim agreement. In their eyes, the humans were nothing more than a mistake waiting to be corrected. And if Princess Xyra had lost her way, she too would be dealt with accordingly. They would restore order, at any cost. Lord Calthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eviscerator, as it drifted silently above Earth's moon. A swirling fleet of Imperial warships orbited in formation, poised to subjugate this defiant world. Yet the more the Empire probed Earth's defenses, the more unsettling their discoveries became. "We expected them to be unprepared," Calthor murmured, his mandibles clicking in frustration as fresh intelligence scrolled across the tactical interface before him. "But this is something else." Commander Vela, his second-in-command, flicked her talons across the interface. "They've built deep bunkers, sir. Entire cities hidden beneath their surface, some of them shielded even from orbital scans." Calthor's expression hardened. "How long have they been preparing for this?" Vela hesitated. "It seems decades, maybe longer." Calthor's brow furrowed. Decades? No species outside the Empire had ever anticipated contact with galactic forces, let alone prepared for war on this scale. It was impossible, or so they thought. But the humans had not only expected the stars to come for them, they had made sure they would be ready. "What else?" Calthor asked, his voice low with suspicion. "They've repurposed their civilian industries for war production," Vela said, pointing to several reports. "Factories that once built vehicles and electronics now churn out kinetic weapons and armored transports. They've even modified ancient technology, combining primitive Earth designs with recovered alien components." The tactical display shifted, showing the wreckage of alien probes scattered across the human colonies. Time and again, Earth's forces had intercepted Imperial scouts and studied their design. Their weapons were crude by Imperial standards, railguns, missile batteries, electromagnetic pulses, but they worked, and they were everywhere. "They've been experimenting on our tech," Vela continued, "creating hybrids. We detected old nuclear weapons, but they've modified them to release electromagnetic pulses that disable shields." Calthor's jaw tightened. It was a grotesque strategy, melding old volatile human weapons with scavenged alien systems. The result was inelegant, ugly even, but undeniably effective. A transmission from one of the scouts interrupted their conversation. "Sir," the scout's voice crackled, "they have planetary defense platforms, hidden in orbit, masked by debris fields. If we attempt an atmospheric entry, we'll face immediate resistance." Calthor scowled. These humans were not behaving like prey. They had taken every lesson the Empire's enemies had learned too late and applied it proactively, as if they had known all along that war would come to their doorstep. "They've been waiting for us," Calthor muttered under his breath. "They've prepared for a war they never hoped to fight." Vela shot him a concerned glance. "It's more than that. These humans, they act like survivors, not conquerors. They've built everything to endure, not to expand." Calthor's mind raced. This was not a mere skirmish. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. A foe that fights to survive with nothing left to lose is more perilous than an empire bent on conquest. "We must adjust our strategy," Calthor whispered. "They won't fight by our rules." His eyes narrowed as he stared at the blue-green world below. If the Empire wanted to win, it would have to crush this spirit of defiance before it spread beyond Earth. The Imperial envoy ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, a sleek arrowhead of polished silver gliding toward the United Nations diplomatic compound. The Empire had sent one of their finest negotiators, Ambassador Zelk. His mission was clear: secure humanity's submission or pave the way for an invasion. The envoy ship touched down without ceremony, its landing gears hissing against the concrete. A team of armored diplomats emerged from the craft, their silver robes billowing in the wind. At their head, Ambassador Zelk strode with an air of quiet authority, his expression serene. To him, this was a formality. Every species they had encountered before had yielded to the Empire's might. Waiting for them on the tarmac was General Maria Thompson, flanked by representatives from Earth's various governments. Unlike the ornate uniforms of their alien counterparts, the humans wore practical military fatigues. Thompson's face betrayed no emotion, though her sharp eyes tracked every movement the aliens made. The two groups met in the center, where the flags of Earth's nations rippled in the wind. Without preamble, Zelk inclined his head and began the ritual greeting. Your world stands at the threshold of a greater purpose. The Empire offers protection and unity to all who submit willingly. Refuse, and we cannot guarantee your safety. General Thompson raised an eyebrow. We appreciate the offer, she replied coolly, but Earth prefers independence. Zelk's serene mask faltered, if only for a moment. Independence is an illusion, General. No world survives alone. Thompson's smile was thin and cold. We've managed just fine so far. Zelk's eyes narrowed. You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. Submit, or the Empire will ensure compliance by other means. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken threats. Then Thompson leaned forward, her voice low. You assume we're afraid. Zelk's antennae twitched slightly, a gesture of annoyance. You should be. Thompson folded her arms, unbothered. Fear's a funny thing. We've lived with it for so long it stopped working on us. The ambassador's calm facade cracked further, a flicker of unease passing over his features. The humans weren't pleading. They weren't bargaining. They were simply waiting. Take your time, Thompson said with a faint smile. Decide if you want to fight. But know this, if you start it, we'll finish it. The alien delegation exchanged uneasy glances. They had expected compliance. They had not expected defiance wrapped in politeness. For the first time, Zelk realized the truth. These humans weren't just resisting. They were ready. And they weren't going to break. The alien fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, a wall of shimmering ships that eclipsed the stars. Thousands of warships descended toward Earth's orbit, expecting swift victory. The humans were waiting. As the first wave entered low orbit, Earth's hidden defense platforms roared to life. Kinetic weapons launched from the debris fields, streaking through space with deadly precision. Railguns hammered the alien vessels, sending kinetic rounds tearing through their shields. The Empire's elegant ships shuddered as the impacts rippled through their hulls. Alarms blared across the fleet as EMPs detonated, disabling shield generators and guidance systems. Suddenly, the invincible armada found itself vulnerable. The first strike had cost the Empire dearly, and Earth had survived, against all odds. But the battle was far from over. In response to the humiliating loss, the Empire assembled a second, far larger fleet, bolstered by reinforcements from the inner colonies. This time they adapted. They adjusted their tactics, deploying ships with enhanced shields, electronic countermeasures, and swarm drones to overwhelm Earth's defenses. The new fleet arrived in waves, coordinated and relentless. Massive carriers launched hundreds of fighters, while destroyers unleashed barrages of plasma and ion cannon fire. The skies above Earth lit up as if the heavens themselves were at war, but the humans adapted faster. The first wave was met not by brute force, but by cunning. Earth's defense platforms shut down temporarily, vanishing into radio silence as decoys. Hollow satellites disguised as weapons floated in orbit. Alien fighters chased the wrong targets, wasting time and ammunition. Moments later, hidden missile batteries on Earth's surface unleashed a barrage, catching the exposed fighters mid-flight. In the confusion, human ships, ugly functional hybrids, slipped into the enemy formation like wolves among a flock. Small frigates with reverse-engineered jump drives blinked in and out of the battlefield, striking from unexpected angles. Crude kinetic weapons slammed into sleek alien vessels with devastating effect, exploiting weaknesses the Empire hadn't anticipated. They fight without pattern, Commander Vela reported aboard the Eviscerator, her voice edged with frustration. Every time we predict their movements, they change tactics. Calthor glared at the tactical map, which shifted chaotically with each passing second. Human ships darted unpredictably, weaving between larger vessels and cutting supply lines. They didn't fight with elegance, they fought with efficiency. Brutal, unrelenting efficiency. They don't have patterns, Calthor muttered darkly. They only have intent. The alien commanders tried to regroup, but each attempt was met with another surprise. A squadron of human fighters would break off just as the aliens thought they had them cornered. A sudden strike on an unprotected supply vessel would send the Empire scrambling. Every victory, the aliens claimed, felt hollow, as if the humans were always one step ahead. On Earth's surface, guerrilla tactics reigned supreme. The Empire tried deploying ground troops, only to encounter resistance fighters who struck from hidden tunnels and underground bunkers. Cities that had seemed defenseless were revealed as traps, forcing the Empire's forces into deadly ambushes. Soldiers disappeared into the shadows, only to reappear where they were least expected. It was a battle the Empire could not understand, a war of survival, waged by a people who had prepared not to conquer, but to endure. The Empire's forces grew frustrated and disorganized, struggling to keep up with humanity's relentless adaptability. Calthor clenched his fists as reports of losses flooded in. "How can they keep doing this?" he demanded, his voice a low growl. "They should have crumbled by now." Vela glanced at the latest combat logs, her expression tight. "They're not trying to win in the traditional sense, my lord. They fight like they've already lost everything, like they have nothing left to lose." Calthor fell silent. It was a grim realization. The humans didn't fear destruction. They had already lived through it, and now they fought with the desperation of those determined to outlast their enemies, no matter the cost. The Empire's fleet returned battered and humiliated, and across their networks, the cracks in their supremacy began to show. At first, it was only whispers, fleeting rumors slipping past sensors on the outer colonies. Stories of battles lost, of invincible fleets retreating in disgrace. Then came the broadcasts. Human operatives hijacked communication arrays, feeding raw combat footage directly into the Empire's tightly controlled information streams. The galaxy saw everything: alien ships shattered by kinetic rounds, soldiers fleeing human ambushes, and mighty vessels brought down by primitive yet devastating EMPs. For the first time, citizens of the Empire saw what their rulers had hidden from them. Their armies were not invincible. Their enemies were not weak. The footage struck like a virus. It wormed its way through planetary networks, spreading across colonies before the central authorities could react. On distant worlds, where imperial propaganda had long declared humans as backward and easy prey, the truth landed like a hammer. These humans were not savages. They were survivors. And they were winning. The initial responses were swift and brutal. The Empire's security forces cracked down on any signs of unrest, silencing those who questioned the official narrative. But suppression only fanned the flames. More defectors followed, officers disillusioned by the Empire's failures, soldiers refusing to die in what was starting to look like a losing war. Some turned their ships around, surrendering to the humans in exchange for amnesty. Others fled into neutral space, unwilling to continue fighting for a cause that now seemed hollow. Within weeks, the broadcasts had reached the Empire's core worlds. Entire sectors erupted in dissent. Citizens who had once revered their leaders as divine began questioning their motives. If the mighty fleets of the Empire could be defeated by a small, defiant world like Earth, what else had the Council lied about? On the bridge of the Eviscerator, Calthor stood rigid, watching the chaotic reports scroll across the display. Entire colonies were on the verge of rebellion. Supply lines were fraying, and every day brought new defections. His once mighty armada was shrinking, consumed not by human firepower, but by doubt. "End this broadcast," Calthor snarled, slamming his fist onto the console. "Shut them down." Vela's expression remained grim. "We've tried, my lord. They adapt faster than we can block them. Every time we cut one signal, another appears. Their information spreads too quickly." Calthor's mandibles twitched in frustration. The humans weren't just fighting them on the battlefield. They were fighting them in the minds of their people. The Empire's greatest weapon, its absolute control over information, was crumbling. "Then we must retaliate," Calthor growled. "Destroy their relay stations. Silence their voices." But even as he issued the command, he knew it would not be enough. The truth was out, and it was spreading like wildfire. On distant colonies, imperial governors reported mass desertions. Entire garrisons abandoned their posts, slipping away into the night. Some fled in fear. Others sought out the humans, hoping perhaps to join the winning side. It was a nightmare the Empire had never imagined. They had built their rule on the foundations of fear and control. But now, for the first time, those foundations were cracking, and the humans, with their relentless broadcasts and brutal honesty, were prying the cracks wide open. In a desperate attempt to stem the tide, the Council issued new decrees. Surrender to the humans was punishable by death. Any officer found spreading dissent would be executed without trial. But it was too late. The fear that had kept the Empire's subjects in line for centuries was no longer working. The humans had shown them something far more dangerous than defeat. They had shown them hope. The decisive moment came in the Garthon asteroid belt, where the Empire's largest supply convoy was guarded by a fleet twice the size of any deployed before. This was the lifeline the Empire needed to maintain its war efforts against Earth, a route carrying fuel, munitions, and reinforcements from the core worlds. If the convoy reached its destination, the war could drag on for years. If it failed, the Empire's supply chains would crumble. Calthor stood on the bridge of the Eviscerator, watching the tactical map fill with thousands of Imperial icons. His fleets were arranged in perfect formation, a web of overlapping defenses designed to protect the convoy at all costs. "This time," he muttered, "there will be no escape." But the humans had no intention of escaping. They were coming straight for the heart of the convoy, using tactics that defied logic and reason. A small fleet of human ships appeared first, ragged hybrids, cobbled together from alien wreckage and primitive Earth engineering. The vessels looked like scavengers, outmatched and unworthy of notice. Yet they surged toward the convoy with grim determination. Calthor sneered. "Fools, they throw themselves into our guns." The Imperial destroyers opened fire, plasma bolts and ion cannons lighting up the void. Several human ships disintegrated instantly, their debris scattering across the asteroid field. But the rest pressed on, diving through the explosions as if the destruction of their comrades only made them more determined. Then, without warning, the human ships blinked out of existence. They disappeared from the tactical map, vanishing from every sensor. "What? Where?" Calthor's command trailed off as the tactical officer scrambled to locate the missing vessels. A heartbeat later, the human fleet reappeared, inside the convoy's formation. They had jumped past the Empire's defenses using short-range warp drives, a reckless and dangerous maneuver no Imperial captain would have dared attempt. Chaos erupted as the humans opened fire from within the convoy. Kinetic rounds shredded supply ships, and missile salvos tore through unprepared escorts. Imperial vessels tried to regroup, but the humans were everywhere at once, dancing between ships, striking supply lines with surgical precision. "They're targeting the convoy directly," Commander Vela shouted. "They're not even engaging our fleet." Calthor watched in stunned disbelief as his carefully arranged defenses unraveled. The humans weren't interested in the fleet. They were dismantling the logistics that held it together. Each destroyed fuel ship, every shattered ammunition carrier, was another nail in the coffin of the Empire's war effort. On the front lines, Princess Xyra led a squadron of defectors, Imperial ships that had switched sides. Her voice rang clear over the comms, rallying her new allies with unwavering resolve. "We cut their lifeline," she ordered. "We don't need to destroy their fleet, just everything that keeps it running." The Imperial commanders tried to adapt, issuing new orders to protect the remaining supply ships. But it was too late. The human fleet was already slipping away, disappearing into the asteroid field like shadows. By the time the Empire regrouped, half the convoy was gone, destroyed or captured. Calthor's hands trembled as he stared at the wreckage scattered across the tactical display. This wasn't a battle, it was a disaster. The humans had outmaneuvered them, not with superior firepower, but with ruthless precision. They knew, he whispered, realization sinking in like a dagger to the chest. They knew exactly how to dismantle us. The Empire's fleet retreated, limping back toward safer space. For the first time in living memory, an Imperial armada had been forced to abandon the battlefield, not because they were outgunned, but because they had been outplayed. As the eviscerators slipped into the void, Calthor felt the weight of his failure pressing down on him. The humans weren't just fighting to survive anymore. They were winning, and the Empire, for all its power, had no answer to their relentless adaptability. The shock of the Garthon defeat reverberated through the Empire. For centuries, they had been the unquestioned rulers of the galaxy, their fleets unmatched, their conquests inevitable. But now, for the first time, they faced the bitter taste of defeat, not just on the battlefield, but in the hearts and minds of their own people. On Earth, the victory was met with quiet satisfaction. The war wasn't over, but the tide had turned, and humanity, having struck such a decisive blow, now held the upper hand. The message arrived in the Empire's capital on Telva, transmitted directly to the council chamber. It was short and to the point. General Maria Thompson stood in the center of the transmission, her expression calm and resolute. "We offer peace," she began, her voice steady. "But let there be no misunderstanding. If you continue this war, we will respond with everything we have. The next time, there will be no mercy. You will be left with nothing." The silence that followed her words was deafening. The council members, once so sure of their power, now looked at one another with uncertainty. They had never been addressed like this, certainly not by a species they had considered beneath them. Thompson continued, her tone unwavering. "We do not seek conquest, we do not wish to rule, but we will defend our world and our people with every weapon, every strategy, and every ounce of strength at our disposal. If you force us to, we will fight until there is nothing left." The message ended, and the council chamber remained still. The weight of the threat hung in the air like a storm cloud. They had witnessed what humanity could do with limited resources and hybrid technology. If Earth unleashed its full might, the consequences could be catastrophic for the Empire. Lord Calthor, standing in the shadows of the chamber, was the first to speak. His voice was low, simmering with barely contained fury. "They dare to threaten us?" "They have earned that right," came a voice from the far end of the room. It was Elder Rin, one of the more seasoned members of the council. His eyes narrowed as he weighed the situation. "They have beaten us at every turn. Continuing this war will only result in more losses." Murmurs of agreement began to spread through the chamber, though not all were convinced. "Are you suggesting we submit to them?" another counselor demanded, his voice thick with indignation. "No," Rin replied sharply, "but I am suggesting that we recognize the reality of the situation. The humans have grown stronger with every engagement. They have turned our tactics against us, and now they stand ready to strike a final blow." "And what would you propose, Elder?" Calthor spat, his mandibles clicking in irritation. "That we crawl to them begging for peace?" Rin's eyes met Calthor's with a steely resolve. "I propose that we negotiate. Before we lose more than just battles." The chamber erupted in debate, voices rising in a cacophony of fear, pride, and anger. Some, like Calthor, refused to believe that peace with humanity could be the solution. Others, more pragmatic, saw the writing on the wall. Every defeat had weakened the Empire's grip on the galaxy. Every broadcast from Earth had chipped away at their control over their own people. Finally, the Emperor's voice cut through the noise, calm but commanding. "Enough." The council fell silent as the Emperor rose from his throne, his gaze sweeping over his advisors. His expression was inscrutable, his thoughts unreadable. But when he spoke, it was with the authority of a ruler who understood the gravity of the situation. "General Thompson has made her position clear," the Emperor said slowly. "We must consider our next move carefully. If we continue this war, we risk losing everything." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "Summon our envoys," the Emperor ordered. "We will speak with the humans, but understand this. We negotiate from a position of strength, not weakness. We are still the Empire." The council members nodded, though the unease lingered in the room. The decision had been made, but it was clear to all present that the empire they had once known, the empire that ruled without challenge, was no longer the same. Humanity had forced their hand, and now, with the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, the question was no longer whether they would make peace, but on whose terms it would be. The negotiations took place on the neutral world of Xyra, a lush and ancient planet untouched by war. The ruins of a long-forgotten civilization dotted the landscape, a fitting reminder that even the mightiest empires could fall. Delegations from both sides arrived under tight security, though the atmosphere was tense rather than hostile. Neither side wanted to provoke the other. Too much was at stake. The humans arrived first, led by General Maria Thompson, her expression cool and unyielding. Beside her stood Captain Elias Thorn, the man who had been marked for execution by Princess Xyra, but spared, an act that had become the first small crack in the Empire's armor. The Imperial delegation arrived shortly after, led by Elder Rin and Princess Xyra. Xyra's presence caused murmurs among the human representatives. Some saw her as a symbol of betrayal. Others saw her as a key to peace. Whatever the opinion, it was clear that she was no longer the obedient tool of the Empire. The weight of her choices rested on her shoulders, and in her eyes was the resolve of someone who had chosen a different path. The two groups met in the heart of a crumbling amphitheater. The ruins framed them like an ancient stage, as if the ghosts of the past watched silently, waiting to see if these new players would make the same mistakes. Elder Rin began with formal pleasantries, his words measured and diplomatic. The Empire acknowledges the strength and tenacity of humanity. We come not to surrender, but to seek an understanding. Thompson inclined her head slightly, accepting the gesture without offering any comfort. We're not here to gloat. We're here to end this. The negotiations began slowly, cautiously. Both sides made their positions clear. The Empire would retain autonomy over its core worlds, but it would cease all military operations against Earth and its colonies. In exchange, humanity would offer knowledge, technological advances born from their hybrid experiments, and assistance in stabilizing the Empire's fractured supply lines. But it wasn't just logistics that needed repair. Trust had to be rebuilt, and that required more than treaties and trade agreements. At a quiet moment in the talks, Xyra turned to Elias Thorn, her voice low but clear. "Do you hate me?" she asked, as if the answer mattered more than anything else. Elias regarded her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "No," he said finally. "I think you saved me." Xyra exhaled softly, as if a burden she hadn't known she carried had lifted. "You saved me too," she admitted, though I didn't realize it at the time. Their exchange, though brief, set a different tone for the negotiations. It wasn't just about politics. It was about people, about choices, and the consequences of those choices. The Empire had changed, and so had humanity. In the end, both sides made concessions. The humans offered their knowledge of guerrilla tactics and hybrid technology, while the Empire shared ancient star charts and engineering secrets. It was an uneasy alliance, but it was a start. When the final terms were agreed upon, Elder Rin spoke once more. "You didn't just fight us," he said quietly. "You changed us. We will never be the same." Thompson gave a small, satisfied nod. "Neither will we." As the negotiations drew to a close, the two delegations stood together on the amphitheater steps, gazing out at the ruins that surrounded them. It wasn't just peace they had achieved. It was the beginning of something new, something fragile, but with the potential to grow into something strong. Princess Xyra glanced at Elias Thorn one last time, a small smile curving her lips. "I think we've just rewritten the stars," she whispered. Elias chuckled softly. "Let's hope we got it right this time." The war had ended, but the galaxy was not the same. Peace was fragile, and rebuilding would take time. Across the Empire and Earth, people struggled to adjust to a new reality, one where former enemies now had to become allies. On Telva, the Imperial capital, the old war factories were being retooled. Engineers who had once built warships now designed vessels for exploration and commerce. In hidden workshops across Earth, scientists collaborated with alien counterparts, piecing together new technologies from the wreckage of war. Human engineers marveled at the elegance of alien systems, while Imperial scientists were stunned by the sheer practicality of human ingenuity. "Their solutions are crude," an alien engineer remarked, examining a piece of human hybrid technology. "But somehow, it works." A human technician grinned, wiping grease from his hands. "Yeah, we like to keep things simple. Simple breaks less." These small moments of collaboration reflected the larger change taking shape across both societies. The war had taught them hard lessons, and now those lessons were shaping a different future, one built not on domination, but on cooperation. On Earth, Captain Elias Thorn stood atop a hill overlooking one of the underground bunkers that had once been a final refuge in case the Empire's invasion succeeded. Now it was being transformed into a research facility. Scientists, human and alien, worked side by side, their laughter and conversations filling the air with an energy that felt foreign after so many years of tension. Princess Xyra joined him on the hill, her silver armor replaced by more practical clothing. She looked out at the facility below, a thoughtful expression on her face. "It's strange," she said quietly, "to see our two peoples working together." "Strange," Elias agreed, "but good." Xyra turned to him, her eyes reflecting the same mixture of hope and uncertainty that had settled over the galaxy. "Do you think it will last?" Elias was silent for a moment, considering the question. "I think we've all lost too much to go back to the way things were," he said finally. "So yeah, I think it might." In the Imperial Palace on Telva, Elder Rin met with General Maria Thompson, the two of them seated across from each other in a quiet chamber. They discussed cooperative efforts, trade routes, and joint exploration missions. But beneath the formalities, there was a mutual respect, something neither had expected at the beginning of the conflict. "You've given us more than just peace," Rin said, his voice heavy with reflection. "You've given us the chance to become something better." Thompson smiled, though there was a tiredness in her eyes that spoke of the sacrifices made along the way. "You gave us that chance too." There was no triumph in their words, no boasting of victory. They both understood that peace was not an endpoint. It was just another beginning, filled with challenges they would need to navigate together. But it was a beginning nonetheless, and that was enough. The vast shipyard floated silently in the void between Earth and Telva, a testament to what two former enemies could achieve together. Human engineers and alien artisans had worked side by side to build the vessel that now stood at its center, a starship unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Its hull was a fusion of function and beauty. The angular utilitarian design of human engineering blended seamlessly with the sleek curves and shimmering materials favored by the Empire. Beneath its surface, alien energy reactors powered human kinetic weapons, and hybrid warp drives pulsed with experimental technology. Every component told a story of two species learning from one another, of a conflict transformed into collaboration. The ship was named Second Chances. In the observation deck, a small group of leaders gathered to witness the launch. General Thompson stood beside Elder Rin, their expressions quietly reflective. Princess Xyra and Captain Elias Thorn stood together, watching as the final checks were completed. A gentle hum filled the air as the ship's engines came online, a soft blue glow radiating from its core. The countdown began, but no one spoke. There was no need for speeches. This ship, and everything it represented, spoke louder than words ever could. Xyra glanced at Elias, a rare smile touching her lips. "We made it," she whispered. Elias chuckled softly. "Not bad for a bunch of stubborn fools." The final countdown echoed through the observation deck. 5, 4, 3. The Second Chances lifted gracefully from the shipyard, its thrusters glowing as it began its journey into the unknown. It glided through the void with the elegance of a predator and the strength of a survivor, a symbol of what could be achieved when differences were set aside. As the ship disappeared into the stars, Thompson folded her arms and gave a small nod. "This is just the beginning." Elder Rin tilted his head thoughtfully. "Do you think we'll succeed, building something better?" Thompson smiled faintly, her gaze still on the stars. "I think it's worth trying." Elias leaned closer to Xyra, his voice quiet. "Where do you think it's headed?" "Somewhere new," Xyra replied. "A place neither of us has seen before." The observation deck fell silent, as the glow of the ship's engines faded into the endless night. But in that silence, there was no fear, only hope. And with that, the galaxy moved forward, carried not by conquest or fear, but by the promise of second chances.